Hi, and welcome to The Flow Show. I'm Joanna Turner, Intuitive Business Mentor, and this is our first interview of this new podcast, and it is with my beautiful friend, Patricia Lohan. I wanted her to be first. She was the first person that popped into my mind, and she is just one of the best humans you will meet. She is just a really wonderful, sunny, happy, amazing person. And I will tell you a little bit about her official bio. In this interview, we really just dived into her amazing flow stories, really talked about her spiritual journey and how that unfolded, and really didn't even hardly get into some of the amazing work she does. So I'll have to get her back on. But yeah, the stories she tells are just absolutely magical. They are classic flow stories and exactly what I wanted this podcast to really be around and center. I think it's really important. So Patricia Lohan is a beautiful Irish Feng Shui expert, speaker and author. She's a manifesting magnet, an alchemist, healer, and real-life Irish Celtic Shaman. Some people call her the Mary Poppins of Prosperity. Patricia is the creator of PowerHouse Feng Shui and the author of A Happy Home, a guide to creating a happy, wealthy life and become a business powerhouse using Feng Shui. She helps entrepreneurs make their homes and businesses magnetic to money, luck, and blessings. She shows you that what they don't teach you in business school and what lies between the lines, your top secret tool for success. She's helped thousands of people across the globe embrace Feng Shui and creates lasting changes in their businesses, homes, and lives. Patricia has seen firsthand the power of the mind, surroundings, and inner healing, clearing, and alignment, and everything works so holistically. She loves entrepreneurship with 15 years of experience running and growing 3 successful startups on her own. Patricia has been featured in media around the world, including the New York Times, CNN, Fox, Forbes, the New York Post, She Knows, Essence, Mind Body Green, USA Today, and the Elephant Journal. And with that, I will hand you over to the episode. I hope you enjoy it, and let me know your thoughts. Thanks so much. Welcome to the Flow Show. I am here with my beautiful friend, Patricia Lohan, and I have invited her on as one of my very first guests of the podcast because we have experienced some magical flow stories together. I know Patricia lives in this magical world of flow herself because she is such a beautiful, high vibe, sunny person. And we're just going to dive in and tell you some really cool stories about our lives, and I think possibly more. I feel like these flow stories, and you can tell me what your experience is, Patricia, but I feel like when we embark knowingly or unknowingly on our spiritual path, flow seems to happen a lot more often, and the signs seem to pop up, and the miraculous, wonderful things happen. So I'd love you to tell us a little bit about how you got started on your spiritual path, and how maybe your first time you started noticing things really clicking into place for you.
Yeah, and I just love this because I've had like a bit of a little epiphany lately about it, about one of the specific like original like starting flow stories and connecting the dots. And you know, one of the things is that when we start in our spiritual path, we mightn't see things happening all of a sudden, and they might seem like they're very disconnected, but they're all leading towards like a big shift is what I've realized. So my kind of starting into spiritual story, I have always had like a little bit of an interest in the occult. Like I had books about Feng Shui when I was 15. Like I don't know who does that, what 15-year-olds. And you know, one of my favorite, most powerful spiritual books that I read and supported my dad with when he was passing, the Anam Cara. I listened to a guy on the radio talking about it when I was a kid and went up and bought it. And, you know, back then it was £17. I remember how much it cost. I was like 14 and I was spending £17 on this book in the shop, being like, what? And I brought it home and I'm like reading it. It's all about soul friends and faith and Christian spirituality and Celtic mysticism. And I really didn't really know what I was reading, but I was like, I really like this. So I've just always had like a curiosity around this kind of thing. But when I got into my 20s, I was super cynical. I was also in a very dark place. And I think that this is where the flow part comes in, when you're just like in such a dark place. I was like desperate, basically. I would go home and cry on the couch every Friday evening. My flatmate, my workmates used to be like, oh, cry day Friday. It just was, and that was a place where, that was a time when I spent a lot of time looking for solace outside. So whether it was like binge drinking, overspending, shopping, like food, like I did everything on the external to try and like fill my soul. And I was still coming home and crying every Friday. And then I quit the relationship because I was like, okay, it's the relationship's fault. It wasn't the relationship's fault. You know, I left the relationship and I ended up even actually worse, like kind of like binge dating. You know, it was just like everything in excess. So what unfolded though was quite fascinating for me as I think of these things. You know, I'm in the car one day driving to work, and you know, I am listening to the radio and it's late. It's like 10 o'clock in the morning. And I'm meant to be opening my parents' business at 10 and it's 10 and I'm driving into work. Like, so there's no one opening the place, you know, and they're on holidays. And this woman is on the radio talking about a retreat center in Italy. And I was like, oh, a retreat center in Italy. Oh, okay. So I didn't even think about it. I just heard it and I was like, oh, that sounds familiar. And I was like, that's the place that Nora Ann sent me an email about yesterday. And I was like, oh, that's interesting. And I walk in, I open up the restaurant. I'm like late because I sit in the car listening because I'm just like, I don't care. And this is how little I was concerned about work, or about my business, the business I was running. I was like, oh, I'm just done. And I walked in, opened up, the waitress came in a bit later. And I went downstairs and my assistant said, Patricia, you need to take a holiday. And I said, I know exactly where I am going. And I literally went online to that place because I looked up and said, that's the place I got an email about yesterday. So I didn't know. And I think this is part of it. And one of my big things about flow is that the help that we need is always like 1 degree away from us. It's literally not far. It's like right in our circle, but we have to listen. So how did I end up kind of nudging to this yoga retreat? Well, one day I came into work and the yoga teacher walked in. He'd been coming in every day for months. And I just said to him that one day, do you have a yoga class? And he's like, tonight at 7:30. And I arrived at the yoga class and I went to the yoga class, ran in late and sat down. He said, this is an hour for you. And it was possibly the first time I'd ever cried in public, apart from when I was drunk, which I don't remember, but I'm sure I did. I know I did have a lot of those drunken, teary ones, but I was bawling, going like, what an hour for me. And it was all these like disconnected events. Go ahead. Yeah.
So did the yoga thing happen before you'd gone on this retreat, or was it around the same time you discovered both of those
It was
things?
all kind of in sync. So I like went to the yoga class and then I had this woman tell me about this place. And then you know, so this is all like these disconnected events that felt very disconnected. And then so I'm going to the yoga, then this retreat comes up. Then I'm at a women's business networking event. And this woman comes there and she's at the table with us. And I'm like, who is this woman? And I'm like, I teach about angels. And I was like, angels, what are they? So cynical. I was like, what the hell? No. And she kind of like, gave her details or whatever. And I was like, I don't believe them. I don't, whatever. And I was so disconnected. And I think this is part of it. At that time, I felt so disconnected. I had no idea. Anyways, the angels woman came into my life, and I ended up drinking too much at a big ball and getting a very bad kidney infection. And I woke up one morning being like, this has to stop. Like, this has to stop. I need to quit. I need to detox. I need to do something. Like, my body is, you know, like, it was so severe, as in I thought I was going to die. from alcohol poisoning. So I ended up going to this holistic place for acupuncture, and I'm there getting this acupuncture and doing these detoxes, which is so funny now because I'm into cleansing more now, but in a way more conscious way. And what was going on back there, it was like also unconscious. I think this is the thing. It was like, I didn't know that I was doing these things and I was being guided. It was all like, oh yeah, I'll go to the yoga. Oh, I'll do this. I didn't know that these were all like spiritual things, to be honest. And I go to the yoga, this thing, and then they say, oh, there's this guy coming. He's a student of Don Miguel Ruiz. It's going to be a 4 agreements weekend. I think you'd like it, Patricia. So I was like, okay. So I book into this retreat thing. I get into my bedroom, and there's sharing a room with 2 other ladies, and the angel woman walks in. And I'm like, hello. And I'm still cynical about angels. And now I'm sharing a room with her for like the next 3 days. And, you know, I learn about the 4 agreements. I had no idea who they were. I didn't even know what they were. I was in this thing. And then the angel woman, I'm like, I don't believe. And she's just like, well, ask for signs, like just ask for, and I was like, okay. So then I'm like, I leave the retreat, drive home, walk into my house. I open the door with my bags, and I'm not kidding you, a feather floats in the apartment, inside in the apartment. A feather floats from the sky down in front of me in the room, like out from the ceiling as I walk in, and I'm like, what the hell? So I'm like, okay. Like, she was like, ask for signs. I was like, okay. But she's like, angels, feathers. I was like, right. So this is the thing. It's like, and so from going to then I was like, right, I'm going to do other angel workshops. So I went up to her angel workshop. And then next minute, I'm at the angel workshop, and there's this woman sitting beside me who's like super annoying. She drove me nuts. She just drove me nuts. I was like, I cannot stand this woman. But I had entered a competition for our restaurant to for speaking Irish. And it turns out this woman used to be a retired Irish teacher. So from some reason over the workshop about angels and learning how to connect to the divine, I still don't have a flipping clue. Like, I still have no idea what's going on. And I'm just like in this place. I'm at this retreat, this angel thing. And this woman sits beside me. She teaches Irish. And I was like, I need some help with some Irish. Like, I've got this interview. And the last 3 years, I've entered this competition for the restaurant to get this massive PR package and to do all these things, to use the Irish language. And I said, you know, every year I've done it, I've been so skin in the teeth. I know I'm like a finalist, but I don't win. And I think it's because I don't do the interview in Irish. So I was like, I need some help. And she was like, I'll help you. So she started coming in, and she's an avid astrologer. She's the first person to introduce me. She'd be like doing bits of astrology with me. And I'm like, still no idea what to be yapping on about at the same time. She ended up kind of being my little best friend. Like, she still is an amazing friend. And she started talking about meditations. And then she'd be like, okay, Patricia, like 4 months in, we finished up the Irish language thing. I win the competition. Turns out some of the judges arrived on that year. They didn't even speak they didn't speak Irish. After me doing all this practice, I was like, anyways, I won it. That was all fine. I won it. And Henrietta would say to me, she changed her name in the middle of it all as well, which was so weird for me. She's like, went from Marie to like Henrietta. I'm like, oh man. And she's given me books about stuff. And she hands me a book one day about Mary Magdalene. And I'm like, oh, great. That's fine. Yeah. Well, okay. So I'm just like floating along with all of this mad stuff. And I get to with her, and she brings me to these full moon meditations. And I used to come back from those full moon, like there was girls reading auras. I was still like green, and I'm like reading auras and doing these. I used to come back like high as if I'd taken drugs. After those sessions, like after those meditations, they were so deep and so connected. And the women were such spiritual women. They were older women, and the community was just rock solid. So that was interesting for me to dip into. And like, ironically, like I dropped out of kind of meditation and ended up now I'm like meditate like 2, 3, a few hours a day nearly. And I'm like, oh my God, like I can't believe I was tapping into it back then. So it's like all the things wound up happening. So anyways, one day I'm in the bar and this man walks in, he's a wine rep. And he's like, Patricia, there's this tour in France happening. And I'm like, oh, a tour in France. He's like, I'm going to get you a place on it. I think you're going to love it. And I was like, okay, fine. Grand. So I'm going to go on a free trip, all expenses paid trip to France. And I get there and I'm on the bus talking to all the people. So putting this in context, my parents had like a bar and restaurant and an off license, like, so a wine shop, and it was mostly a wine shop. And we did stock this company's wine and we had good sales of it. But like, I was there with hotel owners who sold 50 times more wine than we would have ever sold of this. Like, everybody was like, they were like out of my league. And I'm like, how did I get on this tour? And we get there and the woman is like, oh, well, we're going to go and visit this church and we're on the Camino de Santiago and we go visit. It's basically a spiritual tour. We all get brought on. We're visiting churches. We're visiting all these chapels. And I'm brought around and I'm like, oh, that's interesting. Saint Madeleine. And then it's like, oh, no, it's not Saint. It's Mary Magdalene's remains. It's like, are there. And the crypt that she's in. And I'm after getting this book about her. And I'm like, whoa. Like, and it all felt kind of normal at that time, but it wasn't at all, you know? Mm. So there's like, and it was like weird because it was all happening, but none of these events for me felt like they were connected. It was just like, I just got in this wine shop and then I come back and be like, imagine that happened. Like, I ended up in Mary Magdalene's remains. And the woman who was giving us the wine rep woman tour, was giving the tour, she was telling us about the priest who was going to bring, and she's like, I can't believe he's going to be able to do it. Like he was very, very ill and very shook the last time I saw him. And I was like, all right, okay. And I'm not kidding you. This man was ethereal. Like, he was floated towards us. I was like, I don't think he was actually physically there now. Because I sat there and I'm like, I thought she said this guy was sick and I'm not well. And I'm like, he's floating towards us to give us the tour. So it was, and that kind of all then, you know, led to, oh, my mom came in one day and was like, I think you need to quit, you need to leave. And I was like, oh, I'm leaving. I'm going to India to become a yoga teacher. And that just popped out of my mouth. I'd gone to one yoga class a week and I ended up in India at a yoga class. So there's a whole joining dots of all of this craziness, because it does get even more insane, because I booked the retreat to Italy. I booked the retreat to Italy and I get to the retreat. I'm still super cynical about all this stuff, even though I'm on a retreat in Italy. There's a woman doing colouring and I'm like, oh, colouring. So I have 5 million colours and a colouring book here beside me. And there's this girl, yoga teacher, who's just so beautiful. And I was like, I want to be like her. That was a seed thought. I want to be like her. And she just kind of she looked like she did her shit together, basically, unlike me. And she was teaching yoga and she had like a lovely body, lovely mind. It felt very holistic and lovely. My sister came with me and I was doing yoga every day. We got introduced to like that kind of free movement dance, a beautiful yoga and her organic food. And I was like, this is amazing. And the woman who ran the retreat was Italian, and apparently she did these tea ceremonies. So I was like, oh, tea ceremony. I was like, tea, whatever. So I love herbal teas. We all go up to her place and she gets us like with the tea, this ancient tea, and it's a sacred ceremony. And I was like, having none of it. I was a bit rude, actually, if I was to be honest. I was probably just totally rude and being like, oh yeah, I'll go along with this. And she'd put the tea in these tiny little cups and we just smell it. And she's like, this is sacred tea, put it onto your heart chakra and this chakra and all this. And now it's so, like I teach the chakras. Like I teach a whole course. I have a whole new course all about the power of centers and chakras. And I'm now like looking back on, oh my God. So we sniff this tea and then we have to sip it. And after about like 10 minutes of drinking the tea, I am literally dying laughing. Like I kind of got a giggle, like a sort of a giggle. And then all of a sudden I am like rolling around, convulsing, laughing. My sister is like, Patricia must be stoned. What the hell is in that tea? And she had said the tea will give you what you need. And like my life had been pretty heavy, exceptionally heavy, exceptionally dark. I'd be doing all these little things that were making me feel kind of nice. But the tea just like opened something up in me. And it was a sacred tea. It's like hundreds of years old tea, Chinese tea. And I just laughed for the whole night. I couldn't stop. I just couldn't stop. Couldn't hardly drink the other teas. And the tarot card, those 2 cards put out, it said, take the leap. You're between 2 worlds. You're carrying a burden. Let it go, and just take the leap. And I felt like I have to leave the business. So then fast forward to I'm quitting, I'm leaving. And this woman came in and offered me a grant to go do my yoga teacher training. So I got my yoga teacher training course for free. I wrote off my car, so that paid for my trip. And then I get to India, and my friend who told me, my first yoga teacher said, this is where you go to do this Shivananda yoga school. I was like, perfect. And I was like, what'll I do for a few weeks before that? He's like, go to Mysore. I was like, okay. So he goes, go to Mysore. I was like, okay. So this is Patricia. I've been to India once, but not in the same bit. I've been to like Goa, so beach vibe, and a bit of like a tour of the Golden Triangle. This is Patricia with her suitcase landing in India to become a yoga teacher. And he says the directions were get dropped off at the coconut stand, walk up the corner, turn right, and see the pink house and ask him for accommodation. Shiva. And I was like, okay. That was what I knew. So I was like, right, I'm going to do that. So I ended up staying in the B&B for the first few nights. And I went to the teacher that he told me to do. I did all the things. I was very good when following instructions from somebody. So I'm staying in this B&B, and the girl that's sharing the room with me for the first 3 nights is really nice. We do the same class. I move out. The guy in the pink house sorted me out with accommodation. Shiva, and he said, she says, there's a new girl moved into your room that you moved out of. I was like, oh, amazing. So we go off, and she goes, do you want to meet? Let's go for dinner tonight. So we met her. She's English. We're all having our dinner, having a great chat. Turns out that she's also going to do the same teacher training as me in Kerala. We're both going to the same Shivananda one. So that's like synchronistic enough. But we start finishing off our dinner, and she turns to me, and she said, someone says, do you want anyone tea? And I was like, oh, geez, I can't touch tea. I had a crazy tea experience. And she's like, I had a crazy tea experience. I was like, where did you have yours? I had mine in Italy. Me too. So I went to the retreat in Italy in September. She went in October, drank this tea, and stood staring at a tree for like a few hours, bawling, crying. I was laughing. She was crying. She ended up deciding to quit her job and move to India to become a yoga teacher. She stays in the same room as me, and we're both going to the same ashram.
That's mad. That is so mad.
And then we think we have this world figured out.
Right? Okay, let's take a breath just for a second, because this is mad already, and I freaking love it.
I know.
So there's a few bits I just wanted to sort of pull out of it, I suppose. One, I just cannot imagine you being sort of that grumpy and that miserable. Knowing you now, right? So the difference in obviously who you were then to who you are now is worlds and worlds apart, to the point where I struggle to imagine you being like that. But I was also pretty low and spent my Friday nights usually just exhausted asleep, early. I remember I was dating somebody, and it's like, all you want to do is like watch a movie, and I'd be like passed out after 5 minutes. Like I had nothing left in me because I was so miserable. So I totally I understand that you could be that low, but I just the difference in you is so dramatic. I love it. I
know.
And I think one thing that I've noticed now, and I think what you were sort of saying as well, is when you're in the moment of it, it doesn't make any sense. It's not supposed to, right? We're not supposed to understand that it's happening at the time. And it's not until sometimes where you look back that you can join the dots. Because when you're in Italy, you can't see that. You don't know she's coming next month. You don't know that you're gonna go home and your mom's gonna tell you need to quit, right? You don't know any of these things. And so when you're in the moment, you can't see that wider picture. And I think sometimes when I'm, obviously nobody's perfect. And sometimes I think one of the lessons within that is sometimes when something's happening to you, like you said, you breezed past that you totaled your car or wrote your car off, right? So that was, you were in an accident, right? And so I'm sure in the moment of impact or you crashing your car, that would seem like a pretty horrendous thing to happen to anybody. But for you, it was an opportunity. It gave you the money you needed to pay for the yoga teacher training, which opened up the next door. But you can't plan that. But also, there's something negative happening, perceived as being negative. But I think one of the things I've encountered in flow is that no event is necessarily good or bad. And in that moment, you might think it is, or it might be our sort of normal reaction to view it like that. But in hindsight, we can sort of see, oh, actually that opened the door. It led me to that next thing. Some people might say like getting sort of let go from your job or being told, I think it's time to leave. That might have been a dreadful thing for you. And you could have taken it in a whole other way, but you were sort of open enough and available enough, to go in that next direction, which is amazing. And what I think I'm trying to say is one of the beautiful things about flow and what I've discovered in it is, and I know we both share this same, one of our favorite books is The Surrender Experiment by Michael Singer. But I couldn't have read that book all those years ago and understood it or applied it to my life. But now when I'm in a moment that is not great or I don't perceive it as being wonderful by any standard, I try and surrender into it because I don't know, is this event good or bad?
We don't know. And that's the thing.
We don't know.
It's this idea of having preference. It's like we don't need to have preference because and when we do have preference, we're actually just like creating and causing struggle within ourselves.
And I think the other part of it is it will find a way. Like I think some of those people on your journey were literally probably angels. Your angel lady showing up. Some of these people that have come into my life and literally gone, go to this place. I never see them again. I honestly think they've just disappeared and I've gone, but I was very open at the beginning as well. I'd be like, oh, they said to go and try this thing. I better go try the thing. And I'll just go and do it very innocently. And often, get a huge shock, but it's wonderful. Those people don't necessarily know that one thing they said to you had any impact on your life. That's the other beautiful thing, right? Like I'm sure I've said things to people and they've often come back and told me because now that I know, they go, oh, that one thing that you said to me changed the trajectory of everything. Like if I wake up, sometimes I'll think of somebody or I have a dream about them, like I just did last week. My friend Vanessa and I had this dream that she'd moved and I had to tell her. And so I messaged her, just WhatsApped her and said, hey, I had this dream about you. And she messaged me back and said that was the perfect timing for that message to come to me. It was a confirmation she needed. And then off she'll go on her adventure. So I love that as well, that these people are sort of coming into the mix and just sending you on your next part of the journey. And they have maybe got no idea what then unfolded in your life, which it's just mind-blowing. And I just love it. And I'm sitting over here with goosebumps up and down my arms every time you say something, because it's that magic.
And it's just
right?
all like crazy. It's just sometimes so incomprehensible. And then the other part of it, like, what is it? Is it like resonance? Like for me, I'm just getting to a whole place of like feeling that it's almost like resonance, and especially like manifesting things. Like, so, the other one that is so nuts is the Ken one. So like I had that idea, and this is what really came to me recently, was that, the higher energy you're in and the more you're in the unknown, the less you are attached to it. So for example, like I woke up in my 20s with a crazy dream, this amazing dream. I never dreamt dreams, but I had this amazing dream about meeting my soulmate. And I got so excited. Like there was this giddy excitement in me. And it was just like, wow, amazing. Oh my God, he's doing this, he's doing this. And I met my friend and my sister for lunch. And we went to this cafe and I was just like, I was literally ecstatic, excited about this dream I had. And I was like, I'm going to write him a letter. So my sister pulls a page out of her diary. I start writing it with this pink pen, writing the letter, dear soulmate, I can't wait to meet you, blah, blah, blah. Took it in the envelope, in the drawer, do nothing for years and years and years. I'm just gone about my business, doing my life. But like rewind back to 16 years of age, I'm in France. I want to set up a new email account, and I pick a name or a word that I will never ever forget. My password was Barbie. So like literally,
back in fashion. Back in fashion.
Now it's 100% back in fashion, and
you're ahead of your time. You could maybe sell that.
I'm always ahead of my time. This is actually one of my traits. I'm like 100% ahead of my time. So I had Barbie as my password. Whatever, many years later, like 15, 16 years later, I am moving into a house with my future husband, Ken. And I was I'm just like typing my password in, going like, oh my God, I have been typing this password for all these years for Ken, for Barbie, and now I'm marrying Ken. And that's like, what the hell? How the hell does this kind of thing happen? I'm getting married. My sister comes from Australia, books a random Airbnb in Galway, in our hometown. We're only there for a few days for our wedding. She's staying there. And the woman who owns the guest house actually owns that cafe that we'd been in. So she's there getting her breakfast there every day. And one day she remembers, oh, Patricia wrote that letter. I wonder, is it here? The girl in the cafe was like, we haven't got rid of anything. It's all here. Do your best. Have a look. So she finds it. She finds it. She looks at it and she's like, I cannot believe it. First of all, she reads it and basically describes Ken. Exactly Ken. And then what's even weirder is the date I had the dream. She pulled out that diary page from that day, and it was the 28th of August. And that is the day we got married. 28th of August.
I have more chills. I actually remember you telling me that story years ago and just having my jaw on the ground and being like, wait a minute, what? She found the letter when you're actually getting married and it was in this public place that whole time. And I mean, that you couldn't, if you saw that in a rom-com, right, in some sort of romantic thing, you'd be like, nah, not possible.
Exactly.
Didn't happen.
I know.
That author has some imagination. And yet it's
some imagination. I'm like, it's the truth. And the thing is, like, Joe, even with you and me, like, I remember being in Bali. I don't know how we were connected on Facebook, but your picture popped up and it's like, I'm in Bali, and I was like, I'm going to go meet her. Like, it was so weird. I got on my scooter. I drove out to this event. I had no intention of even going to the event. I get the, I'm like, I have to meet this one woman. That was it. And then I woke up to him like, hello, I'm your stalker.
I did actually, for a moment, think, oh God, I've got a crazy one here.
Thanks.
I was a little bit, I mean, you were so open, obviously, and just like, I've come to meet you. And I was like, oh God, what do you want? But obviously within a couple of minutes, I was like, all right, she's cool, don't worry. Obviously you're Irish, I'm Scottish. We had a little bit of something in common. We're both in Bali. And actually, I remember we sat down in that beautiful place. It was up at Akasha, I think, wasn't it?
Akasha,
in Bali. And I just learned how to read the Akashic records, and then I'm in this place called Akasha, and it was all just flowing rather nicely at that point. And I remember I said to you, I think you said, "Oh, where are you staying after the conference?" Because I was speaking at the conference, and we had accommodation included, so I hadn't really thought too far ahead. And that's very unlike me, because when I went traveling for a year when I lived in Bermuda, I was moving to Australia, and that whole year, Patricia, was planned. Every hotel everything was planned for the whole year.
No way!
I booked a series of tours because I was single. I still am, but I was on my own, and I was like, right, I don't have time to like research everything, but I'm just going to book these big tours. So I had 3 months of tour booked in South America. I had a month booked in Asia, and I just did these big tours booked almost for the whole year. Not quite. There was a little bit of wiggle room, but not a lot of space for flow because I was so booked up. And I remember saying to you, well, actually, you know, I'm trying to not be so controlling. And, you know, I actually don't know where I'm staying after this, after the conference. And you just immediately said, well, you must come and stay with me. And I was like, I've known this girl for like maybe 5 minutes. And you were like, I have a spare room. It's beautiful. It's an ensuite. We've got a swimming pool. And I was out in the rice paddies. And I was like, okay. It didn't take too much convincing. And I was like, do you think you need to like run this past your husband or something? And you were like, no, Ken won't mind. He loves visitors. And I was like, okay then. And I didn't know you from a bar of soap. I didn't know him.
I know.
But obviously I thought that was a good idea, and you were the most beautiful hosts, and I've stayed with you many times over the years since then. And yeah, it's just lovely. But it's like, what are the chances of me being in Bali? Then we're somehow connected. I don't know how. You see the photo, you decide to go. You know, just all of these little things. Like, what was that nudge within you that told you that was even a good idea? So I'm very grateful that you did.
I think that this is where it's at. It's just like, not to question the things that kind of pop up that are like, oh, I'll just do that. Oh, you know, I'll listen to that radio thing. I'll just, I'm going to go see her. I'm going to go meet her. And then the things that have unfolded, like we have met in Ireland, Bali, America twice, and in Sydney.
Yep. And where else? I think it's been somewhere.
Is there anywhere else? Were we somewhere else?
Yeah,
we were in LA. We were in LA, San Diego, and Yeah.
So we've done quite well, I think, across the years, and you know, it's been lovely because we've both, you know, made an effort or gone or wherever we've been, and our paths have just crossed. And there was actually, I was just thinking before we got on the call, we've had a few other lovely sort of flow moments. There was one time you were staying in LA, I was in San Diego, but I didn't know you were in LA.
Mm-hmm.
And I got a message from a friend of mine, Emily Utter, and she messaged me and said, hey, come up to LA for the weekend. And I actually didn't go. I already had a hotel down in San Diego. I was exhausted, but she was really quite pushy, which is not unlike Emily, but she's never like gone out of her way to, you know, really be pushy about something. But I didn't end up going, which maybe I should have come. But she also didn't live in LA. She was living down in Encinitas at the time. And she used to always go and stay at this one Airbnb when she was up in LA. And and it was, you know, it was a bit not out of the way, but it wasn't like super central. It was a bit of a hike to get down to Abbot Kinney. And then lo and behold, you were staying in the exact same Airbnb, just this little house.
Yeah. So basically, the owners of the Airbnb, I met them in Bali, in a bar. I met them at a bar in Bali, and me and Ken got on really well with them, or some party or something. We met them, and then we met them at a bar, and we had New Year's Eve with them. And then I was like, I'm going to come to LA. And they're like, well, if you come to LA, you can stay with us. So I was coming to LA, and then Emily was coming to stay. They're like, oh, our friend is coming to stay. So and they did Airbnb. So Emily was staying, I was staying, we were connected. She's like, I messaged my friend to come to LA. And I was like, I was messaging my friend as well. Turns out we were both messaging you.
Right? And I had actually stayed at that Airbnb as well. I can't remember. I think it was before you had been. I'd stayed at it as well. So of all the places to stay that you would stay in, you know, of all the thousands of Airbnbs or hotels in LA,
like seriously.
Yeah, I had also stayed in that place. I can't remember if it was before or after you. But yeah, I remember because you two didn't know each other. And so you're both messaging me, telling me to come. And I'm saying no, and then you're going, wait a second, you're messaging Joanna Turner too? What the heck? Like
the same person.
That is so wild.
What are the odds? Like, it's just so wild. Like, it is just so amazingly wild. But this is it. Is it resonance? Is it like, that's where I am so at a place now with it, around it being like resonance or some sort of like resonant, like that, like it's that frequency that we're admitting, and it's like, it's a match.
Mm-hmm. It has to be some. I mean, I do believe everything now is frequency, vibration. I mean, I think everything is that. Flow is a frequency, a very high frequency, and I think when you sort of bring your, high vibe is a little cliche, but when you do work on your vibration and your, at vibrating at that flow level or whatever it is, then I do believe that things start clicking into place. That's been my experience. And I feel like when I'm not in flow, I am in a sort of darker space, or I'm not, maybe I'm not open to the miracles. I'm not open to the amazingness in those moments. But then sometimes when I've just thought, oh, I really need something to work out here, or I've taken that next step forward, something magical has also happened. So I don't want to say like you have to be vibrating at this certain level for any magic to happen.
And I think that also it's like for me, part of it also is that there's always help. Like last night I was going through this, there's some stuff coming up for me around the event that I'm organizing. I'm just like, I just can feel something. I'm like, okay, what is it? Like, what is it? And before I went to bed, I just called in like loads of ascended masters and loads of people. I was like, just, will you tell me what it is? Like, I really want to know, like, help me, like, show me, just show me. And I literally woke up with a jolt this at like 2:30 in the morning and got a picture straight in my face. I could see the picture pop up, like it was like on a cinema screen. I was like, oh, okay, that's what it is.
Wow. I love that.
And it was so clear. And I asked, and I was like, that's it.
Mm-hmm. Hosting events is no small feat. So I'm not surprised you have some stuff coming up.
It's not. It's no small feat, especially when you have, really. I don't know. I was actually thinking of your events in the States and being like, I don't know how she did it for a few days. I've got 3 days now, or 2 days coming up, and I don't know how you did it, because I'm like with my team, and I'm like, it's going to be great. I know it is. Like, people are joining. It's fine. But there's what I realized was, it's not just to be in that flow state. There was something just not flowing, and I had to really get to the bottom. I knew I had to get to the bottom of it, and I need to clean it up. So, and this is very much a Michael Singer thing of just like that flow of energy, that Kundalini is moving through your body, and it's always available. Like that positive, powerful energy is available at all times. It just gets blocked by events or things that have happened. And when I saw the screen pop up, I saw an event that I organized years and years and years ago when I was running the bar. And I was like, oh, yes. Because at that time I hadn't done anything about it. I knew exactly what.
I'm just kidding. I said, so you're going to have an open bar? Is that was that the message? No.
No. Like, I don't know what we'll be having. Maybe some cacao. But it's fascinating. Just fascinating.
That's amazing. Yeah, I mean, I had so many. I might need to do a whole episode about the flow stories connected to my events. But one little piece of it, actually, it turned into. Well, I can't come, by the way. I know that you've invited me, but it's my cousin's 50th that weekend, so I'm afraid I won't be able to come to this one. So I was like, looked up the dates, and I was like, oh, what's happening with Patricia's event? But yeah, what was I going to say? Oh yeah, so. My first event, it wasn't supposed to be 3 days, but it turned into 3 days, just kind of by accident. And I won't go into the whole story, but it was on the 19th of August it started, I'm pretty sure. And this was maybe mid-June. So 2 months before the event, I think I had sold 17 tickets, but I'd promised some of the speakers that were coming 100 people in the room. So there was a little bit of a gap between what I had promised my quite prominent speakers in the industry that I did not want to let down or embarrass myself. I had already had these 17 people were probably clients who were getting a free ticket with their coaching program kind of idea, who had also booked flights and accommodation. And I had this like, oh my goodness, like it's not just on me, it's now affecting other people. Like there's a ripple effect of like other people. So I felt this massive responsibility. I was like, people have booked flights from Australia to come, from Canada, from the UK. Like, people were coming from all over the world already, just in that 17 people. And I was like, we'll have a great time, even if it's just
I have to say,
it'll be fine. It'll be okay. Like, everything will be fine. And then, but then I had a whole weekend. I went up to Byron Bay when I was living in Sydney at the time. I went up to Byron Bay, and the whole weekend in Byron Bay, which is, so if somebody listening hasn't been, it's a very sort of spiritual hub in Australia. So Byron Bay is actually based or built on a plane of obsidian crystal, apparently.
Oh, so wow!
Which is very deep, dark crystal that shakes things up in your root chakra. Let's put it that way. So the story goes that you're not supposed to live in Byron Bay because the energy is so strong that it doesn't actually, people don't sort of do well there living long term. It used to be sort of traditionally for the original people of Australia, it was more of a ceremonial place, a meeting place. It wasn't necessarily somewhere people live long term. So people, sort of backpacker, it's quite a transient place, I think partly because of that. So when people get there, all of their stuff comes up, right? All of their unhealed root chakra stuff comes up. And either they become big drinkers and, partying massively to sort of deal with that stuff, drinking tons of alcohol, or they go very much down the spiritual path, trying to sort of navigate whatever the heck is coming up for them. So it's one of those places that magical things tend to happen. There's loads of great energy there. And my whole weekend was about surrender. I can't even tell you the messages. It was like surrender. I'd open a book. It would be like surrender. I'd open another book. It would be this. I'd be listening to a passage about surrender, on an audiobook. I'd open a book. I'm reading the same passage about surrender. I'd go to the coffee shop. The barista is telling me that life is all about surrender. My friend invited me to a sound healing. The theme, surrender. I go to like this other thing. I'm invited into my first personalized, this is a whole nother story, but this happy ceremony. And that was all about surrender. You can't, the sort of series of events over that 2 days was bananas. And I was like, oh, I think I need to surrender the outcome of this. And so it was really, for me, and this was a new concept to me. This was 2016. 2 years into sort of any vague spiritualness, probably in a sort of similar place to where you are maybe when you went to India, right? Still hadn't quite grasped that pushing and hustling and just making it happen wasn't the only way. And that was how I was introduced to, I couldn't miss the message. I was like, oh, what's this surrender thing? And I really surrendered to whoever was going to be there was going to be there. I had to accept. I was like, it's already a success. The fact that it's happening, the fact that, things are booked. I was like, it's going to be okay. Whatever happens, it will all work out. And so really, I had to surrender into the flow. We sold 120 tickets and about 100 people turned up. And so it all worked out just perfectly. But also the morning I was about to go to the event hotel, which I had never been to, by the way. I'd never even seen the event hotel that I'm hosting this thing at for 100 people for 3 days in LA. So the morning of moving from another Airbnb into this event hotel, I was down on Venice Beach. And I just remember standing there and I thought, and I realized, life was moving. People were running along the boardwalk, they're cycling. And I remember thinking, no matter what happens over this next 3 days, the sun will rise again on Monday. And whatever transpires over this next 3 days, I will continue to be a coach. No matter what happens in this window, I will carry on. And I just had to sort of hand over, the 3 days. I had to surrender to my team, to the wider magic of what was unfolding. But it was that moment of whatever happens, if I'm mortified, if I'm, whatever happens, I'm going to carry on. And so that was a big surrender into the magic of what can happen in those 3 day containers or 2 days, because you just don't know. you sort of throw yourself into the wind, like, you know, it's a bit like jumping off the stage at a concert, you know, and you're caught, and you just you're you know, you have to trust that the people are going to catch you, and that's kind of how it felt like. But so maybe there's a piece of surrender in there. But you've got a month, you've still got a couple of months, so you'll be fine. And the other thing was learning that people don't buy their tickets for events until the last week or something, and like, you sell your most tickets in the last week, and you've got to keep surrendering up until the last minute, which I've always found very frustrating. But that's it. I'm like, come on, people, commit, let's go. Are you coming? Are you not coming? So yeah, but we can't control.
And I think this is the thing. It's like everything in life is just an opportunity to grow and learn. And whether it's like organizing an event, what we know running a business is just the biggest journey of like self-development and growth. And if you allow it to be more magical, it will be, you know, we'll have all these synchronistic moments. And, you know, I'm always so fascinated with the business when I'm like interviewing people who've joined our program, and they're like, you just popped up. And it's like, you know, if we just trust that the messages and the ads or the things are going to the right people at the perfect time, they're getting it, you know, that they're getting the message, they're getting what they need to get, and the people that need to hear your message will do. And that's just it. It's like none of our business.
Exactly. On that note, tell us a little bit about your event and when it's happening and where.
No. The event is in November, the 17th and 18th of November in Dublin, just in County Wicklow, so just outside of Dublin. We're doing it for 2 days this time. I've always, up until now, run one-day events or like week-long retreats. So it definitely is a new, just a new version. And always when I do the one-day events, I'm always like, there's more. I want to do more, and I want to have more, you know. So I'm really excited about this, because what I want to work on, and is a little bit like what I talked about with that dream the other night, is like, well, we know that there's things that are blocking the flow of us being in alignment. And it's this idea of, you know, flow, like tapping into this divine flow within us. And there's things that are blocking us. So getting an opportunity to step away from the busyness of our world and reflecting on, and actually not even, we don't have to look for it. It will just come up. It's a bit like me last night. I was like, what is the thing? And seeing it, and then using that time, and through some of my favorite tools and methods and meditations and processes for people to just release them and just to free up that flow. Because if we're in those lower energy centers, it's really hard for us to tap into the joy and the love and the good feelings. And we are doing 2 days, and the second day is just really about like tapping into the highest vibration, highest frequency. But the first one is about really taking this time out of our life to reflect, to release, and then to re-envision. And then the second day is about that re-envisioning and connection.
Oh my gosh, that sounds amazing. I've been at one of your events before, and it was fabulous. I think, yeah, you never know. And what I love about, and a lot of my flow stories have come from going to events and meeting new people. And, you know, a lot of your things in your first story happened when you did turn up to the yoga class, when you went to that meditation or the Don Miguel Ruiz thing. And yeah, so you just, I think it's wonderful. If you are in Ireland or you can get there, I would highly recommend doing that. And you just don't know what's going to happen. It might be, I think part of it as well, they used to say when you agreed to do something like an ayahuasca journey or something like that, that the journey started when you agreed to do it. And I think the same thing kind of happens with an event like yours. The transformation starts when somebody said, actually, yes, I'm going to go and do that. I'm open to something. I want to change something. And the magical sort of container happens when you book your ticket. So it's like you saying to the universe, I'm open and I'm ready for some change. I'm ready for some magic to happen. So I love that can happen for people. And who knows, maybe somebody listening will tap into something, and then, you know, you're open to something, and you get on the plane and I'm always sitting next to the most wonderful people on the plane. I have a cool conversation with somebody, or I pick up the right book at the airport, and then I don't know, there's just something magical about travel and sort of throwing yourself into the big mix of the world. I think that allows flow to come and get us somehow. Like, I find when I'm too
out of our norm, we're just
yeah.
We're just like out of, it's into the unknown. And then when we step into the unknown, whether it's the yoga class, where it's Pilates, whether it's, you know, going on a plane to an event, or just going to an event somewhere that's not normal for you, it just, there's a space there for it to happen. Whereas if you keep doing the same things, you're going to keep getting the same results. If you go to the same places, nothing's going to change. And like that, for me, it still resonates even when I work with clients with the Feng Shui. I'm just like, if your home stays the same, everything's going to stay the same. Like, something has to change. And it's that resistance to change that then is resisting these new opportunities and all this unknown, and also blocking the idea of the flow state, of just being in flow, you know, and having these beautiful things happen, because it's that life is all about change anyways. So everything's always changing.
Oh, I just was having a thought there, and maybe you can sort of join the dots in your words, but you were obviously, people don't know you, you're a Feng Shui master, and teach people and have a beautiful course on teaching people how to transform their homes, to transform their lives, because the energy is really a reflection. So coming back to that sort of travel and changing things, how do you, is it something about the Feng Shui of where you're going to be that also reflects in your experience? Like, if you're always in your house and then you go and you stay in a hotel room for a couple of nights, is it like, are you sort of experiencing life differently because you're staying in a hotel room, and so you have the Feng Shui that's the reflection? I don't know if you know what I'm trying to say about that, but is there something?
Yes, for sure. Like, I think that once you step out of your own familiar environment, and you know, this is what I say to people, you can change your life by changing your environment, like changing your home, and you don't need to move countries. And I think this is one of the things, like, you know, you don't have to move to India to change your life. I've seen my clients change their lives just by changing their physical environment, like by feng shuiing it. But when you do go to another place, you are resonating with a whole different frequency of the environment, and it could be bad, good or bad. Like, in synchronistic stories and synchronistic moments, you know, Ken and I, my typical way, Joanna, you would have, you know, now you're more of the flow. But our typical way is when we fly into a country like Bali, would have booked like a couple of nights, and then we'll go find our more permanent, longer term accommodation. And a few years ago, I booked our trip to Mexico. So we were flying to Mexico, and we were there we were in Mexico for the first few days in one place, and then I, like, because I had this energy of like, oh, it's Christmas time, and I let my thinking mind in the way of like my normal way of doing things. I decided to book another accommodation in another place, and it was definitely from a place of fear. It wasn't from a place of excitement or joy. It was just like, oh my God, I better have somewhere. It's Christmas and New Year, like, it'll be booked out or whatever. So we had our first place, which felt amazing. It was gorgeous. It was fabulous. And then we moved to the other place because we were going to a different town. And we got there, and I walked in immediately, and there was like the smell of mold. And I was like, I've just gone through all this intolerance of that. So I was like, oh my God, get me out of here. So they moved us to another room. The whole place was just like, ugh. And I just found it so fascinating, because I had booked the first place from excitement and from like, oh my God, I can't wait. And then the second place from a place of like a bit like, oh, like fear, I gotta get to book something, like quick. Anyways, but so we were like, I really want to leave here. I didn't like that town either, neither of us did. We're like, okay, worst case scenario, we're just gonna like come back, get a taxi back here at nighttime, and go back to the other town every day, first thing in the morning. So that was our worst case scenario. But we're like, we're gonna find something. So I was online looking, couldn't find anything. And I was with our friend, we were gone off surfing. There was hardly any coverage. I looked at all these different things, and I found this one hotel, and I was like, that looks nice. And then I rang them. The coverage was bad, so I ended up not getting it. And I was like, oh, that's a pain. Anyways, he says to me, my friend says, I'm going to text that hotel owner. And I'm like, yeah, but the room is gone. Like, there's no point. And in my mind, I was like, there's no point. Like, the room is gone. She's booked out. Don't text her. Like, I was like, don't bother her. Anyways, he's like, I'm texting her. So he just texted her. I was like, okay, fine, let it go. And literally a minute later, she texts back and sends us like 30 photos of this 1 bedroom little suite that was completely on this in like paradise, the saltwater pool, sea view, sunsets, like stunning. The people had just cancelled about like 5 minutes earlier at her friend's place, and she'd sent a text going, "Does anyone have like, I have a room, I have this place available."
Yeah.
So he sent the photo. I was like, "It can't be for real. What?" So we got there and we were like, "Oh my God." Like, it had a massive barbecue. It had a beautiful little place for me and Ken. The owners were gone, so we had the use of their whole pool. It was like jungle, trees, a manicured garden. Like, even our friend, we were like, wow. And this is the thing. It was like I had just kind of we both let it go. Like, we surrendered. If worst case scenario, we're going to stay in that place for one night and just come back and forward. But we were still, I was looking and I'm kind of, that's it, it's fine. But when he was saying like, I'm going to text her, I was like, don't. But I would just leave it. Just let him text her. What harm is it going to do? And all of a sudden it was like, we're in paradise. And we were like, oh my God, this is better. We would never have even found this online.
I love that. All right. Well, it might just be time to wrap up, just due to our recording issues. In Greece at the moment, and I think they have a storm, and I think that their internet is just a little patchy. We also have a storm due, but it's not supposed to hit until tomorrow. Let's see. But I would love to have you back on another time, and we'll discuss some more of your amazing stories and journey. But in the meantime, can you just tell people where they can find you? What's the best place to find you? And obviously they should come to your event.
Yes, you can find me at patricialohan.com, and that is where I have loads of Feng Shui resources and more information about my live event in November. Because you can tap into more flow with Feng Shui, and that's why I love changing your environment, because it really does help you line yourself up to tap into that flow when your home supports you on a deeper level. And that's one of the things we didn't even touch on in terms of like how Feng Shui impacts your flow, because Joanna knows as well.
Oh, I sure do. That's a whole nother story. I did a little interview with Patricia. It's over on my YouTube channel if you want to check that out, about my experience with that, and how it very quickly changed my life. So it's definitely important, and you do amazing stuff over there. So I'll put some links in the show notes. If you're interested, you can go find her. I actually have one of your introductory courses I could pop the link in for as well. And lots of different ways to connect. And you're over on Instagram, and you're in Greece at the moment, and you're going to be heading back. When are you heading back to Ireland?
In November. So go back to Ireland in November. Be there for November, December, January, February, and then we're on our adventures again.
Wonderful. I love it. It keeps things interesting, doesn't it? That's for sure. Brilliant. Well, thank you.
It definitely.
Thank you so much. And hopefully, if we chat next time, hopefully we'll have some wonderful Wi-Fi situation. But I really appreciate it. I love your stories. I love you, and it's just a pleasure to speak to you and hear about all the magic. So thank you so much, my dear.
Thanks a million.
All right. Speak soon. Bye.
Thank you so much for listening to that episode. Sadly, the event that we discussed at the end has already come and gone between the recording of this and me finally pulling together the podcast. It's already happened. If you want to get in touch with Patricia and start to get connected with her work and her beautiful Feng Shui, you can definitely go to patricialohan.com, or I will also in the show notes leave a link to the Feng Shui mini course that we mentioned. It is a brilliant way to really dip your toe in and get started with Feng Shui and start to see the magic that can unfold in your life when you make really small, easy changes. As you heard, obviously it made a massive difference in my life when I started. I'll pop the link in. It's for only $5. It's a half price one, so it's only $5 to get started. Check it out. And also, we are a brand new podcast, finding our feet, figuring it out. I have a new microphone. So we would really appreciate any subscribes, any reviews, any shares as we get started and get better and improve things as we go. All right. Thank you so much. Appreciate it. See you on the next one.